When you photograph something small, every detail matters. In wildlife macro photography, you're working so close that even the slightest reflection or shadow can change how your subject looks. A wet fungus, a shiny insect, or even the surface of a wet bark can throw back a harsh reflection. That's why lighting and diffusion are critical aspects of macro photography, be it to soften those highlights, spread light evenly, and bring out the textures and colors in the most natural way. In this video, I'll show you some of the different ways in which I use light and macro: direct flash, diffusers, constant lights, and even backlighting, so you can see how each one changes the photograph.
So I'm in Goa and in the middle of monsoon, and because it's the middle of monsoon, it's pouring, and I'm therefore stuck indoors. And such is the conundrum of being in Goa during the monsoon, which is that you come here because it rains, but you're also stuck indoor if it rains too much. So I think I had a very interesting subject which is not likely to move too much. I'm not sure if you can see it in the camera, probably now you can. And I'll be photographing this using various macro lighting techniques. I'll do it first with just the camera and the lens and no flash. I'll then use the flash with no diffusion whatsoever. I'll then use the Magmod diffuser, which I've used before for macro. It's mostly for people but works really well for macro. I'll then use another diffuser which is a nice macro diffuser, and you can see it's really wide in front, giving a large diffusion area. It's almost built for macro. And I'll also use a constant source of light through this LED lamp. And lastly, I'll do a backlit shot using just the torch. And none of them are sort of the right or the wrong way of doing this. All of them are perfectly good ways of doing things. A lot of times I've just photographed without a flash in the jungle when I've had no flash. So I think the objective is to give you an idea of what each different way of lighting looks like, so that you have a sense of what you want to carry when you're out there. So let's start with absolutely no external light whatsoever, right? So there you have it. These are some shots with just the flash, perfectly good shots. I've shot this at a fairly wide aperture because I wanted to get the background. I like the nice green background here. I'm going to retain that. Part of the reason why I'm doing this outdoor and not indoor is because I like the nice lush green background here. I'm now going to mount just the flash, and this is the Godox V1 shooting on the R5 with the Canon 100mm. The Canon 100mm R macro lens, and let's see what we get with the flash. So these are some shots with just the flash, right? And as you can see, the background is still nice and green, which is by design. And with the flash, you can change the settings of your flash combined with your ISO and aperture in such a way that you can completely darken the background out. I don't prefer that. That is not my preferred style of macro photography, but a lot of people do like to shoot that way. So if you want to do that, what you want to do is you bring the ISO to as low as possible, you take the aperture higher, and then you compensate for that by increasing the flash power. I think this was at 1/32 flash power. I can make this 1/8. I can increase the aperture to 1/16. I can reduce the ISO to 100, which is the lowest it is, and yeah, and there you have it. You see that the background is completely black. There's no detail in the background whatsoever. So yeah, that's one way of doing it. Now this was the flash, and one of the issues with this, which you'll be able to notice in the image, is that this part of the flash is sort of pointing right at the subject. Especially with macro, when the tree barks are wet or the fungi has some water on it, or you're trying to photograph a snake which has shiny surfaces on it, What happens is that all of these reflect a lot of light, and with a flash pointing straight at it, some of those are going to be just blown out and white, right? So diffusion is required to cut out those highlights apart from giving a more uniform lighting. So I'll start with the next diffuser I have. This is the Magmod, and there's a few other companies making similar things like this which are much cheaper. I got this when Magmod is the only one. It's reasonably pricey, but I've mostly used it for people photography, but it's quite handy for macro as well. And the good thing is that it comes with this magnetic support, and it just clips on, and when you don't want it, you sort of pull it off. It's quite easy to put on and remove when you're not using it. Oh wait, I was at the setting for the completely dark background, so changing that for now. And every time you're using a diffuser, you need to keep in mind that since it's cutting out some amount of light, you need to take the flash bar up a bit, and you see the direction of diffusion. This is pointing upwards, the flash is pointing upwards, the diffuser is here, so the reflection's going this way. So a lot lesser light going onto the subject, a lot softer light. Light follows the square root of distance rule, which means that every unit of distance that you take the source of light away, the amount of light falling on the subject reduces by the square of the distance. So even a little bit of distance makes a significantly big impact, and taking it away from a direct source that would have been on the flash this way to taking it up this way, cutting out the intensity of light and making the distance longer gives a lot more diffuse light. Started pouring again. Don't know how the audio is going to be, but for what it's worth, let's continue with it.
Notice how the highlights on the wet surface are so blown out.
So this is a regular video light. I use it mostly for filming macro. You can mount it. It gives you a continuous source of light. And after that, it's pretty much like photographing, say, birds or anything. You don't have to worry about whether the flash fired, not fired. You can shoot in burst mode if there's some macro action going on. And there are a lot of advantages with it. But one of the disadvantages is that it's not a huge area. It's probably better than direct flash, but it's not a huge area unless you diffuse it, and if you diffuse it, the intensity is quite low, so it's still not as well diffused, for example, as a Magmod. And I'll still sort of show you what we get with this. Yeah, it's actually reasonably soft, as you can see, and it's quite good. All the better for video. So this is another source of light. The next source actually is the most frequently or the most popular amongst macro photographers, which is to use the large diffuser, and that's because it gives really good soft light on the subject. It diffuses the light the best, it cuts out most reflections, and for the obvious reason that the size of the area through which the light comes is really big. And even for this, the flash is not firing directly at the subject. The flash is firing into a reflective medium inside, which then gets passed on through this. So it's fairly common. Macro photographers do use this a fair bit. Again, since this is diffusing, I'll probably need to increase the flash power just a tad. And so even with this, you could really cut the background out to be absolutely dark. But since I don't prefer that, these are the kind of shots I like. You can see that the reflection on the branches when compared to just the flash is not as high. You can see that the color and the light is more uniform and probably brings out the colors the best, right? So that's why this is such a popular tool amongst macro photographers. And lastly, I'll come to an interesting way of doing macro, which is backlit. And with macro, most subjects have sort of spikes or hair poking out of them, as does this cup fungi. So I've got a regular torch which puts white light, and I'm gonna put this torch here a little close to the mushroom, because I want those hairs really well lit from behind. And yeah, no flash on this, because the flash is going to overpower the torch light. And these are the kind of shots that we're likely to get with backlit. And again, no rule about whether frontlit's better, backlit's better. If the subject has too many sort of hairs poking out of it, backlit gives it a really nice effect. One thing you need to keep in mind is that not all macro subjects are as still and cooperative as this fungus. So if it's a snake or a scorpion or a lizard, it's likely to go away. So one of the reasons why I prefer using a constant light source like this one or the Magmod is because it makes it easier to approach a subject with just the camera lens that faces it and this flash being here. With the really big diffuser, which also I've used many times, is that when it's mounted in the camera, it seems like the camera is a really big unit going towards the subject. Not all subjects are going to be super appreciative of that. Not all subjects are going to be cooperative. So even though the large diffuser gives me the most diffuse light, even though it gives me photographically the best results possible, more often than not, I'm using a lighter diffuser, I'm using a constant source of light, or I'm using the Magmod while I'm in the field shooting macro. This is a summary on all the different sources of light that I use. I also have a ring flash and a ring LED light at home, but I don't extensively use it a lot for the same reason that the ring LED sits on this part of the lens and it makes it like a very big unit going towards the subject. If it's a fungi, sure, you can photograph with that, but if it's something that's likely to move, something that's skittish, hard to get a shot of that. So yeah, that's that on the different sources of light that I use for macro photography.
So those are the three main lighting options I rely on for macro: continuous LED, the Magmod, and the large macro diffuser. Each of them has a distinct way of shaping light. The continuous LED is flexible and works well when I want to shoot both video and stills, but it can heat up and isn't always the best for shiny surfaces. The Magmod is easy to carry and quick to set up, though it does need an extra light for focusing. And the large macro diffuser gives by far the softest light, but it's also the bulkiest and not always easy to handle in the field. There really isn't one perfect solution. The choice depends on the subject, the conditions, and how much gear you're willing to carry. What matters most is understanding how each option changes the look of your images, so that you can decide what's best for you. If you've liked this video, do also watch this other video from Goa to see the kind of images one can make with these different types of lighting.